Welcome to The Game Changers, our interview series where we speak to fearless leaders from the world of creativity. I'm Geraldine Gaillemin from The Blueprint, and we drive business transformation for our clients by placing game-changing leaders. Today, I am delighted to talk to Jessica Tamsedge, who I think of as one of our most fearless, fastest thinking, and perhaps almost fastest talking people that I know. Jessica is the Chief Client Officer at McCann UK in Europe, and she's responsible for driving growth across their key clients, both current clients and also clients of the future. Hello, Jessica.
Hiya.
Hiya.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just jump straight in, if that's okay.
Sure.
I think it's probably a bit of a cliche. I say this a lot to say that your rise to the top has been kind of speedy or kind of meteoric, but I think we also can't ignore the fact that from kind of in 15 years, you've gone from account exec at M&C Saatchi to Chief Client Officer at a kind of big global network where your remit is across the whole of Europe. So I'd love just to dig into a bit around your decision-making and the kind of choices that have catapulted you there. How did you get there in 15 years?
Yeah, I don't think it's like this strategic plan for influence and career path stuffs at all. It was probably less choreographed than that. I think I've always adopted the attitude of, if you're having fun and you're learning, then keep doing it. Say yes to stuff that maybe scares you a little bit, and spend time with people that are very different to you. So I think throughout my time, and you're right, the career on paper looks very advertising agency, but I was thinking about this the other day. I probably spent more, if not equal time working for clients in their businesses on secondment or some form of sort of job share as I have actually in the agencies themselves. So I think all of that has helped me keep my horizons really broad and always thinking about the next thing could take any shape. It's always taken agency role shapes, but they felt very different. So it's probably that.
And do you think that do you find decision making easy? Would you say you're kind of a bold decision maker, like you deliberately try and take kind of brave or different steps?
No, I probably wouldn't. I think I've got a very clear idea, a macro to the point of almost unhelpfully macro sense of where we should all be going. Because I definitely have a sense in the pit of my stomach that this industry and as creative agency partners, we are both the most powerful lever for our clients and our marketing departments we work with, and also the most vulnerable, because it's quite easy to chop and cut and rethink and in-house or take away some of the value from that. So I think I've got a healthy amount of anxiety on my shoulders at all time about how we could be seen in the industry and by our clients. But day to day, when it comes to what's the right thing to do around a piece of work, a creative initiative, how we think about bringing different talent together, I think I'm quite consultative when it comes to things like that, because I'm aware of exactly where I'm at in my experience journey, and I definitely don't have all the answers, and I've definitely not seen it all. And it's also a big part of why I wanted the European role, because you get such different perspectives culturally, in terms of leadership styles. And so while it can be hard if you drown yourself in voices and there's no single right answer, I will definitely defer to hearing more.
Okay. Tell me a bit about your current role then, and how that works. And because I know you spoke to me a little bit about that change of moving out of a kind of business unit into a more kind of holding company level role. Tell me about how that's different.
It's an interesting one, because I think when we start in agencies, you see your path very much within the agency brand that you're brought into, and there's an obvious hierarchy and about 56 or more levels of account management that you work your way through to get to agency leadership. Within networks and holding companies, we have the privilege of being exposed to all of the different marketing disciplines and creative brains and different ways to tackle problems. And so I've always been desperately attracted to more and different, and also the cultural diversity of being in global groups. So it seems very obvious when you put it like that, but I think for me, I was very mindful that I was going eyes open into a role where you'd have less immediate levers to pull and resource to manage and people to direct and all of that structure that comes with a business unit. So I wouldn't have my own P&L. I would have 13 odd that I have to work with and alongside. And so there's a lot of listening well, influencing where you think you can, bringing people with you, talent to task and hoping people share your ambition. So I felt like it was going to be a harder gig to make change, but I knew it was going to stretch me in a different way. So that's why I kind of leapt into this and asked them to give me a shot at it.
Okay, so we've gone from not being bold at decision making to actually identifying something brave and scary, and then actually asking to be put into that position.
Maybe, yeah. Okay, yeah. So sometimes brave and bold, and a bit
sometimes brave and bold. It's funny, isn't it? Because I know Jessica of old, and I always think of you as someone who does make bold decisions. And I remember a particular time when you were in one role and off on your second maternity leave, I think it was. And then you decided, whilst off on maternity leave, to take a call to go to leave that agency and go to a new role. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of women feel quite nervous at that particular point in their lives. So I just love to hear you talk a bit about that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a very healthy sense of, I want to make sure I'm feeling entirely challenged, entirely excited, and feeling and being surrounded by new voices. Make no mistake, I was utterly terrified coming into the role at McCann when I joined to be managing director in 2019. For some reason, I had the almost opposite symptom of maternity leave, where some people, and I've seen this with so many of my team and people that I work with, an erosion of confidence. I almost became this strange person in a vacuum that thought anything was possible, which is actually dangerous at a point. So like, hey, why wouldn't I apply for this random CEO job of a tech company in Amsterdam? Like, why wouldn't I do that? And then you get close to it, you remember your professional experience, you remember the value of experience, and it got a bit more real just before I started. But there definitely was a fearless stage of just having conversations and going, why not? And I also believe motherhood and parenthood and any different like lived experience is a massive superpower. I remember our then CEO, Leo Raymond, when I came back after my first, saying, you just seem like you've got more perspective on things, and that affects your decision making, how you cast teams, how you think about where the pressure points even are day to day. So yeah, big believer in just change brings new confidence.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I think it's a really important thing for women to hear. I think you used the word just then, but you described a kind of lack of confidence and a kind of that kind of imposter syndrome that I think could increasingly come for women, especially when they go off with their first child. So
big time.
I think it's a really positive modeling to know that the things that it brings can be really positive, or even make you recklessly fearless rather than fearless. I like
recommend it.
Let's move on a little bit then. In that kind of career trajectory, that series of recklessly fearless decision making, is there anything you can pinpoint along the way that was a kind of like a light bulb or game-changing moment? I mean, it could be a thing you remember, or a person or a mentor that really kind of counseled you in a particular way.
I mean, so, like loads. I think it's always weird when you get asked about, that single person that's influenced you or that single moment. I feel like they're constant, and I feel like they're everyone. So I've had bosses that have told me previously, what got you here won't get you there, shifting actually how you think about scalable leadership and succeeding through people. I remember joining McCann, and as an exec team, we would talk about how leadership is nothing but energy, and actually how you are setting down that environment for people to feel good and proud to have incongruous views and constantly push. I think I've seen women try to do it all when they've come back from maternity leaves or just have kids and families, and looked at that and gone, it seems hard. Should it all feel possible? And come to a state of realizing that, you have to find compromise in everything. I think there've been, big transformational moments have been when I've spent time working for my clients. So this is probably another theme of my career, is I just fall so desperate in love with everyone that I work with and everything that I do, to the point of becoming like an utter nerd and going, there is nothing more to life than travel demand management consultancy. This is a whole thing. But I think it's a healthy dose of curiosity, so that you can learn from whoever you're working with and properly fall in love with it. It's definitely been a recurring theme.
Okay, and that never stops, does it? Because I think people think misguidedly that you get to the top and you know everything. But what I'm hearing from you is that kind of constantly going into different situations, being surrounded by different people where you just soak up that knowledge and dive into new areas of interest.
100%. I think there's a relevance thing in me that I'm excited about, paranoid about, everything about. And I think I feel that from an industry perspective and an agency perspective, but also as a person. Like, I was just thinking, in our industry, we survive on relevance because our job is to represent brands in culture, in people's lives, in the spaces that they are experimenting with, living with, spending with. And so I think I've definitely got a sense of that on my shoulder constantly around how do we remain relevant? How do I stay in touch with what tomorrow's technologies are going to be? What aspects of virtual or blended reality or augmented reality are going to help enhance consumer experiences? And so I feel like I'm forever learning from anyone that has something to say about it or is reading up on it. And yeah, it's good. It makes the job interesting, and it means it never ever feels the same.
Never. Yeah, it's always fresh.
Yeah.
I'd like to shift kind of slightly into kind of what are you I think you spoke to me earlier about what the things that you're doing at a kind of macro level to help bring through the next generation of talent. I'd love to hear you chat a bit more about that.
I mean, it's so important. Like I remember joining an agency where there was no one that looked like me. And there were women in leadership roles, to be fair, but there was very little ethnic diversity, and there was, still a lot of men in leadership positions, and certain behavioral tropes that were rewarded and not rewarded. And remember thinking, gosh, I do feel another sense attached to that. That's probably not the reason. I think it's genuinely because, like every other agency leader, I get that different brains, different lived experience make our creative product better represent our audiences and everything that comes with that. So I think in the past few years, I've really doubled down on going, how are we going to bring the greatest breadth of brains to creative problems and to opportunities? So within World Group, I was very active in helping set up our Future Leaders Spark Academy, which is across World Group, UK initially, and we're hopefully planning to extend that. But that sort of director level who's thinking about a role or a remit that's in leadership, but speaking and being connected to mentors and partners from different marketing disciplines and with different lived experiences and points of reference. So that was internally. And then I've been fortunate enough to be accepted into WACL and to be a sort of NABS 100 club member, which means that I can do a lot of mentoring, which for me means reverse mentoring and shared mentoring. Okay. So you're hearing about what that next generation of talent really wants and needs and expects from the creative industry. And I'm also getting to connect with them and give them voice and visibility beyond that, and also give them a view on how necessarily hard the journey is, and where to double down and lean in. And so I found that really, really enriching. I think the other bit that I'm really proud of is that I've had the good fortune of being involved with the Women's Associations. It's led by Deborah Williams, who's just a formidable woman who had a background in education and worked for the NHS, and just said, as a Black woman in the UK looking at the corporate spaces, it just looks too hard. I've got to do something about it. So she set this organization up. We worked with her to define her brand, her proposition, her go-to-market strategy and marketing materials. And she's working with massive corporates in different sectors now to mentor kids before the point of academic decision making about careers or that grad level. And for me, it's really important. And we were talking about this the other day, because I've had a slight battle with the idea of diversity for recruitment's sake. And if you look at any agency P&L, things have to fit into certain boxes. What is it doing for the business? And diversity, equity, inclusion is absolutely about getting the business to a healthier state of representation and better work. But you can't do that when you're just plopping people into roles at whatever level. You have to do the groundwork to set the conditions for people to see themselves and feel confident in putting themselves forward. So a rambly way of going, how do we level up the conversation so that businesses understand this is about ESG and social responsibility, and starting the conversation earlier with girls with sort of diverse communities that don't see themselves in corporate leadership roles one day, that wouldn't consider advertising and marketing. So working with the Women's Association, that's exactly what we've done, which is give some of these girls from all walks of life a bit of visibility and access to seeing cultures and environments and asking them what they could bring and how they could shake it up and make it look different in their own image rather than ours, I guess.
Yeah. No, look, I think it's a really good point. I think your point about it's really hard for it to happen at the point of recruitment is a really interesting one. You know, we obviously kind of deal with this all the time. And while, you know, we always present diverse lists and, you know, there's a will on everyone's side to kind of make this change, often when it comes to the crunch, there's something that needs to happen where a quick decision needs to be made, and you can't drive the change that you want to make at the scale that it needs to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Or you bring someone in because you're trying to broaden that representation, and with all the will in the world, you're onboarding them into a culture and you're assuming certain leadership behaviors and styles and experience that either they've not got and they're trying to sort of plug on the fly, or we're asking something of them that we shouldn't be, because, you know, it's as I say, it starts earlier, and it starts with a mindset shift on agencies and any companies really, and going, how do we actually bring different people to work well? So yeah, totally agree. And I feel for you in that role, because you get these briefs all the time going, we need to do this. And as a byproduct, we have to fix X, Y, and Z, balance and representation. It's too hard.
Yeah, no, it is. It's tricky. And, you know, looking at it early and looking at it holistically is the only way to do it. And I think obviously everyone is making kind of huge strides, but I think everyone agrees that there's so much more to do. So it's just interestingly, I was going to ask you about kind of looking to the future, kind of what you would want to change. And I think this is starting to dig into that already, isn't it? So just tell me a bit about, if you were, I don't know, had ultimate control of the industry, even more control than you have now, less could we imagine?
Let's be really clear.
Yeah.
I think the point earlier about these roles succeeding by influence and collaboration and shared ambition rather than mandate. I don't think there's any state where you can just go, and this, you know, even our global network CEO does more listening than he probably does immediate directing. I think you see decision making on capabilities, acquisitions, bets on where marketing is going. But I think when it comes to culture, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you just have to do the work. And so I guess one play would be absolutely, because at agency subsidiary levels, you don't have those ultimate reportable to shareholder ESG criteria. That sits at an IPG or a WPP or Omnicom level. So I think, you know, I'd be interested to look to drill down into what does that look like for us, and how are we going to hold ourselves to account and recognize that some of these bets aren't going to pay off within our own careers or lifetimes. This is going to be about changing the talent pool for tomorrow. And I think the other piece for me is, there's the obvious stuff, but I think a big part of my role is around future-proofing our own value. It's the relevance point. How do we make sure that we're always able to offer and have a point of view on, intelligently and creatively, different marketing capabilities to solve a problem, and actually at a point extending into business transformation capabilities. So for me, a lot of it is all the stuff that everyone says, you know, data that actually liberates creativity, or a return to creativity and understanding of brand. There's definitely something that's been on my mind around how do we better connect the dots between these incredible flagship creative ideas that are game changing. I remember when Duconomy came out with their carbon footprint tracking card to be able to connect commerce with sustainability. That was like an absolutely game-changing product, and won all the awards, all the industry recognition for the right reasons, because it reframed what an agency can do. And I look at some of the stuff that we've done with Xbox around commerce and Design Lab, and, you know, engaging consumers in new ways. I guess my question is, how do we hardwire that more often? So it's in the system, it's in the way we work, and it's by design rather than by exception, or us kind of getting to something which is magical and incredible as a one-off. And I'm not saying it's a one-off, it's just, it should be hardwired into how we use the breadth of our brains.
Breadth of our brains, yes. And I like that. What I'm kind of hearing is, it's how do you make things at a kind of fundamental level, kind of not just effective, but transformational for everyone in an inclusive way. And then also what I really liked about what you said at the beginning was, how do we do that in a truly selfless long-term way? So I might not see the play out of this diversity initiative or this particular kind of brand idea, but it actually has a genuine longevity. So it's less about, the win for me and my headline or for this year. It's genuinely thinking down the line about fundamental change.
Totally. I mean, we're doing work with, Reckitt are a brilliant example because they are an incredibly purposeful organization. They've changed their organizational design to make sure what they does actually responds to what people need today and for the future. And so Nurofen, obviously a brand that centers around pain, all of the work we're doing is looking at, do we have the right representation in the creative supply chain? Do we have the right data and moments and ability to really maneuver media so we can show up in the moments that show we really understand pain for people in every aspect of their life? So I think that purpose piece and the data piece and all of these things are coming together, and they won't succeed unless you have that diversity in the system, like the actual bandwidth of humans that can come at this with very different personal points of reference. So yeah. All connected in a fudgy way.
No, it's massively connected. I mean, Grace Francis from Grey, and when I chatted to her, it was all about that same thing. And it's core level. You won't get the right inclusive outputs if you don't have the right inclusive inputs. I mean, it's actually incredibly hard to do, but very simple at its core.
Yeah, I think the other thing you realize, to your point on what I'd do if I could just point the fingers and all the things happen, is that these things are necessarily hard and they take loads of stuff. So, when the conversation around cultural inclusion was growing in our industry, things like LGBTQ plus partnerships that clients were taking on, or disability initiatives within other organizations, it feels messy, fractious, and quite hard. But I think, one of the things that I've been looking at McCann London initially, and we're trying to take this out more broadly, is the idea of conscious partnership. We mustn't forget we are a service and partner to our clients' brands. And so it's very easy to think we have to do everything. We have to shift all of it at the same time. And I'm a really big believer in starting where there is intention and investment. So conscious partnership for me has been, and all of our business leaders have identified the single social impact or DE&I objective of our clients, where they're already investing, social good that they want to affect, where they will genuinely commit to shifting the dial, and then realigning our own supply chain to that. So for L'Oreal, you can imagine with all of the work they're doing around female empowerment, inclusion, and harassment, that you would absolutely look at working with different production partners. I mean, we're even looking at ad tech solutions that ensure they show up in more responsible media environments. And Xbox, similarly, they've got a commitment to bringing different communities together through gaming. Well, what does that mean for who holds the pen and who sits behind the camera and who benefits commercially from this? So for me, it's really, really, it's just critical that we start there. What is the known thing that we want to make a difference for? And we're really focused on it, because we're at risk of trying to do all of it too much all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And then you don't achieve any of it meaningfully. Cool. Look, I think that's everything. It's been really great to chat to you today. Thank you for finding the time, spending the time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, Gigi.